Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to the Drafting the Circus program, brought to you by Dan Blay Racing Art and Legend of the First Super Speedway. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we go over the biggest weekend in racing that is now behind us. Joining me in the studio, I have my good friends Richard Youden and Louise Torres. Fellas, how are we?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Worn out from a marathon of racing, but you know, at least I wasn't doing the double. I wasn't in the car, so
yeah, I'm worn out with the number of red flags this weekend.
Yes, I know you like to track red flags. That's one of your little things that you enjoy doing to keep up with. So so I kept you busy this weekend. So
yeah, five of them technically, 5 of them.
Yeah, so let's start with obviously the Indianapolis 500. So Scott Dixon, phenomenal performance in qualifying, phenomenal performance in the first 2/3 of the race. He looks absolutely unbeatable. He sets the record for all-time lap leader at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then he has a victory slip between his fingers once again. A little too hot going in the pit lane, couldn't get it slowed down before he hit the timing strip.
I've got a question for you on that, actually, Frank. Quickly.
Sure, yeah.
Do we know which sort of section he got done for speeding on? Was it entry?
It was, yeah, because I was where I sit. I'm right there near the pit entrance, and he smoked the tire, slammed the brakes, coming in the pit stop there, trying to slow it down. And it was
my wondering was because I think he had the last pit stall, didn't he?
Yes, because he started from the pole. Yep. So he had the very last pit stall.
And sometimes what I've seen this happen, especially at NASCAR races, the guys with the last pit stall think they can get out without having to push the pit limiter, which obviously does slow you down a little bit, even if you, in theory, it shouldn't. So I was just wondering, my immediate reaction was that he got it done on exit, but I may be wrong.
I'm quite sure it was on entry. He just came in too hot. I watched him, smoke the tires trying to slow it down. And, by his own estimation, he was probably only a mile or 2 mile per hour over, although I haven't seen the official word of course, Scott's going to say it was close, but man, just disheartening for that poor guy who put in such a great effort all month long, only to, see it slip away that quickly. Also, his teammate Palou started out, with a great run. Scott and Alex were swapping the lead back and forth in the early going of the race. Palou had an issue on pit road where he was entering the pits when the yellow came out, and they closed the pits when he was already committed to pit lane, which has caused for, a lot of people to think maybe we need to rethink that rule a little bit. Maybe if a guy's already committed and in, let him complete his service, but he definitely, got the raw end of the deal there. And then he ended up having to make an extra stop because they didn't get all the fuel in. So that kind of that was early in the race. He was able to recover to, I believe, 9th. But, again.
Yeah, it just took him too long, too late by that point to get there. Exactly.
Then, of course, as we all know, the benefactor of the Ganassi woes was their Ganassi teammate, Marcus Ericsson, who is it's just a great story. Here's a guy who spent 5 years at almost 100 Grand Prix, with backmarker teams, really unable to show what he's got. And then now he's, 3 years into his IndyCar career, or is it 4 years now? Yeah,
he's been competing since 19 when he drove for Schmidt-Peterson for that 1 year.
Schmidt-Peterson, they dropped him after a year. And then so he's been with Ganassi for, all of 2020 and 21. And now he's back with Ganassi, won a couple of races last year, but now, he's, his name is amongst the immortals now. The Indianapolis 500 win certainly changes your life. It certainly changes the way you're introduced to the rest of your life. Just a fantastic day for that young man. And, and there were some people who were a little underwhelmed with him as a winner. But, as I look at this thing, right, you compare him to some of the Indy greats, right? Marcus qualified well. He kept up front all day. He kept it clean all day. And he turned it on when it mattered at the end there. I mean, there's a guy named Rick Mears who used to win races that way, and nobody was underwhelmed with that. So, yeah,
it's ridiculous. People need to. I don't think you'd ever be underwhelmed with somebody who does, who drives in that way. Yeah, was he the fastest guy in the day? Probably not. But he did what he needed to do. He didn't make the mistakes, and I hate it when people say, "Oh, so and so didn't deserve something or whatever." Because he deserved it. Yeah,
He made most of it, absolutely. And I said this back. Sorry to interrupt, Richard.
No.
I made this thought last year. Dating back to last year, the way Ericsson was pretty sporty, like in the top 10 during practice sessions, I said, maybe there's a good chance that Ericsson could be an absolute sleeper. Sure, last year's 500, that wasn't much of the case, but I feel like he has gotten better each year, especially on the ovals, because when I look back at Texas, when he got that top 10, got that third place finish on the podium in road course racing style, that is, top 3 on the ovals in my eye. That's just terminology. But I felt like Ericsson could be an absolute sleeper in this one. And lo and behold, he was there the entire time in the top 6, waiting for his moment. And that's part of Ericsson's character as a driver. He waits for the right moment. He makes his presence known when it matters most, and he did it in that final set of pit stops when Dixon had that pit penalty, and it also helped to have like a bit of a gap, which also helped his fellow Swede Felix Rosenqvist later in the going to be out front, to be in the mix as well. Clean air is vital, and I think the way they mastered the strategy, it worked for Ericsson, and that's why I felt like he's going to be a contender. But don't expect to be right out of the game. Wait for when it matters most, and he got it done.
That's how you win a long race. And I'll tell you, the thing that really won it for him was his outlaps after that round of pit stops, where he was able to, get ahead of steam and got around both McLaren cars. One and then the other, which eventually cycled him to the lead. That was a defining moment of the race. Otherwise, if he stuck behind those guys. Otherwise, it's a McLaren 1-2, which Pato Ward did end up finishing second. And I believe Felix was fourth.
Yeah, Kanan got third.
Kanan snuck in the third. And then Rossi, who started towards the back, started 20th, was in fifth. So pretty good day for Rossi, considering the struggles Andretti Autosport had. Over the month, So, another thing about this race, before we get into talking about the red flag, was the fact that it was a relatively clean race. All the incidents that we saw, I mean, there were, a good amount of cautions, but every incident was a single car incident. We didn't see any guys. Yeah. We didn't see any guys get into one another. Okay.
A couple of guys touched, didn't they? Who touched? There was one, wasn't it Ferrucci and somebody touched?
I want to say probably so. Ferrucci, another guy who shows that he's really good at Indy.
Oh yeah.
He's finishing top 10 every time he's run it. So, I think he did a little touch, just a little touch, but nobody really getting into.
There was there was no accidents based on two people.
Right.
No.
Now, unfortunately, the one of the guys that did wreck was Callum Ilott, who actually ended up breaking his hand, or breaking a bone in his hand, and he will miss the Detroit Grand Prix. And the aforementioned Santino Ferrucci will be filling in for him at Detroit, which will be that'd be pretty good to see. I always like Ferrucci. I think he brings a lot to the series. So
for sure, I think retrospectively he's done what he's done to fix his reputation. It's just a matter of what he wants to do with his racing career, because sooner or later, supposedly, he might dabble in the NASCAR a little bit.
He's done some Xfinity races, hasn't he?
Yeah, he did so last year for Sam Hunt Racing.
That was it, yeah.
Where
I think he's
where led to the Josh
Nope.
Berry double burn moment at Phoenix ages ago, but that's a different story for another time.
Yeah, I want to say he's got a couple Xfinities lined up for later this season.
That's what I've heard. That's
if
what
I'm
I
not
heard.
mistaken, yeah, I don't think any, dates or racetracks have been announced yet, but I believe he's got some funding and has a ride for a couple of Xfinity races, just time and place to be announced. But
the only thing,
but great run for him, great payday for him, So
yeah, it shows that Dry and Roybal still shows. Doesn't matter who they put on the car, they're going to deliver you a strong result. It's just a matter of how to make that next step to be a contender for wins.
Yeah,
that's the next thing for Dry and Roybal at Indy.
Right, absolutely, yeah, and they have shown they have cars capable of running towards the front. They just haven't hit it right. But I think that every now and again you hear rumblings that Dry Reinbold might go full time, but it's not come to fruition yet. But some I wouldn't mind seeing another full time car on the grid put together by those guys. They've been in the sport a long time. So, but Louise, since it's your forte, let's talk about the red flag. Okay, the red flag drew a little bit of ire from the old timers who call themselves racing purists. That said, no, you should have just run out the 6 laps. But I don't know. If you ask me, if you call yourself a racing purist, you're just posturing. Okay, I can't imagine that anybody that sits and watches a 500-mile race, and it's a hard-fought race, would find 6 laps of caution to end the day. I don't see how you could find that satisfying at all. As a matter of fact, when the red flag came up, there were loud cheers that came from the crowd that, yes, we're going to get to see a finish.
You didn't have anybody on the radio going, "It's not right, Michael."
Maybe Johnson's teammate, because he was out in front, but at the time being, yeah, let's talk about that. So since 1964, we have had, counting the one with Johnson, we're now at 20 red flags. The first in this decade, the first is 2019 when they had that big wreck with Bourdais and Rahal where Ferrucci made it through unscathed in turn 3. It's the latest red flag to have ever come out in Indy 500 history, to my knowledge. Lap 197 was the official stop lap.
Right.
The latest beforehand was Townsend Bell from 2014 when they red flagged it at around lap 191, 192.
I think that actually the yellow came out at 191 and they threw the red at 194.
Somewhere along.
Right.
Somewhere
yes.
along
Yeah. Because I was actually looking that up just the other day. Can't imagine why.
Yeah, but for sure, I knew for a fact that when the number of laps left, this was the latest.
So,
I feel like. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, what is the actual rule then, or is this at the race director's discretion?
It's pretty much
at
discretion.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no last red flag lap rule like NASCAR had from like 02 to 04.
Yeah, but I mean, so the IndyCar, their statement, says something like, "We always try to preserve a green flag finish for our fans," right? And then of course people say, well, what happened in 2020? Well, number one, there were no fans there, but no, number two, the way that the end of the pit lane, the pit wall was destroyed, and they were also kind of running out of daylight there. So I think I think that by the time they would have got that fixed, they never would have got going. So that was, we just let that one run out, right?
And on top of the fact, Piggott was injured from that one too.
Yes, yeah. So they had, so you got a guy injured there. The wall is damaged, and I believe there were only 3 or 4 laps left.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 to go. So there was no way because unlike in NASCAR, Indy cars have to be on pit road when they stop the race. They have to, because if they don't, then because they got to start up the car and all that stuff, because it's still like what I understood, and hopefully I say correctly, like how it always has been, you get somebody to start up the car. It's not by the driver's discretion. It's by the crew member that has the equipment for it. Correct. Am I right, Richard? I mean, Frank.
Yeah, they have an outboard starter. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, I want to say one of the things when we go to the hybrid type engine is going to be an onboard starter, which.
Yeah. Same as the hybrid Formula 1.
Yeah. Yep. So, but yeah, they use the outboard starter where they just stick it in the back there and crank that thing up. So,
So it'd be interesting to see how a lot of those like cautions where people spin off actually sort of play out in when they get the hybrid, because that's one of the things in IndyCar, isn't it, where they can just restart them and push them on the way when they're stalled. But obviously, it takes quite a bit of time to get the guys out there, and whereas now they can spin, stall, but bang, off we go. Be interesting.
Yeah, because you've seen in the past where guys, hey, I need a tow, tie the tow rope to the roll hoop and give the guy a push till he bump starts.
And if it's somebody they don't like, they make sure they take the time before they give them a start. If it was Danica, they
That's why it's always a bonus to be nice.
We're talking about Surfers Paradise 08 when they took forever for Danica to get him out because of how she was impatient with them.
Wow.
Yeah, but
it
anyway,
very difficult for a driver when they're in that position. But yes.
Yes, but as far as I'm concerned, I thought it was the right call to get us a better finish. I mean, 6 laps of caution to end the race is, it's like paint drying. You can watch it, but
they had to go quick if they wanted to get a green flag finish with 1 to go.
Yeah, whether you watch it or not, it's going to come out the same. So if you're going to run the last 6 laps of caution, all you're asking is for everybody to start fouling out to their cars. Just saying, I was a fan of it. Most of the folks in the stands were a fan of it. It's just these, keyboard tapping purists. And I'm, honestly, if you're a purist and you say you think that's a satisfying ending, I'm sorry, you're posturing.
I was just curious how
my 2 cents. Yeah. So
yeah, I think they ultimately made the right decision. If they have enough laps, they'll do it. It's not like if it's a late race, they'll probably do 1 lap of yellow and then boom, go back at it, which they did with 2 to go. So they were able to do it because if they wanted to get it quickly, you'll be in a position where you may get a 1 lap shootout and they may have not cleaned everything up. And I think if I remember, wasn't the safer barrier took a hit as well? Because there were a lot of hits in certain parts of the track all throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, a lot of the hits were in turn 2.
Yeah.
Turn 2 seemed to be, and I sit in turn 4.
I think it's the wind, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, the wind was definitely a role because Johnson and McLaughlin, I think they said on the radio broadcast, the wind really kind of kicked in the high gear.
Yeah, well, McLaughlin lost it coming out of 3 into 4. Yeah, he was the only guy that crashed on the other end of the track. So
yeah, and then he sort of had a secondary impact, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, he hit twice. Yeah, he wanted to test both safer barriers, inside and outside,
just in case,
just in case, make sure they all work.
Exactly, but it's interesting to see that they're not, the accidents that people had. They were quite early in the corner with the way that people were, losing control of the car, which was very unusual. I think there must have been something there with the weather conditions that definitely, a lot of people sit there and listen to the drivers and go, oh, it was the wind, whatever. But no, that they were unusual impacts. Normally, you sort of see them more towards the exit of the corner as they're trying to really put the car under load and make, sort of straighten out. But it was interesting to see.
That it was, yeah. So let's talk about the post-race controversy, which would be the awarding of the Rookie of the Year, which has got everybody's panties in a wad.
We have that every 5 years if it's a Dale Coyne driver.
Yeah, I know, right? So, but there's Jimmy Johnson is the 10th guy to be named Rookie of the Year that was not the highest finishing rookie, but the other 9, 8 of the other 9 actually had decent performances in the race. That were, somehow made them a little worthy. Like when you talk about Teo Fabi in 83, Fabi led all the practices. He set a track record, sat on the pole, I believe he led till the first round of pit stops till they realized that the fueling rig on the fueling rig was busted and they could not refuel the car, and his day ended right then and there. So he dropped out early, but yet that performance up till then, made him a Rookie of the Year over Al Unser Jr., who finished 10th.
Yeah, and he came from Formula One, if I recall. He basically came in cold turkey on an oval.
Yep, sure did. It was his first oval race, yeah. And he just came in and like, wow, who's this kid? A couple of other instances. There was Mark Donohue was named Rookie of the Year, even though he was 10 full laps behind Peter Revson. And Revson, I think, finished 5th. I think Donohue finished 7th, but Donohue was 10 laps down. But prior to Donohue having a very long pit stop to repair a turbocharger, his race pace and his driving was, far and above anything Revson was doing. So Donohue was named Rookie of the Year. Now, the one that always confuses me, Simona Di Silvestro.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the more obvious one.
The obvious one. The Alonso one. I mean, Alonso has
not the Alonso one. The one that you mentioned that might have been the exemption, because it involves a race winner.
Oh, Graham Hill. Yeah. Graham Hill had the race fall in his lap.
Yeah, because Jackie had that one in the palm of his hand, so that one I could understand naturally.
Yeah, Jackie had a. This is 1966. Jackie Stewart had a lap on the field. So he had a mechanical take him out with 9 laps to go. Graham Hill inherits the lead and wins the race as a rookie, but they give Jackie Rookie of the Year. And again, Rookie of the Year is subjective. It has to do with race performance through the month, performance in qualifying. And then it has to do with the intangible things like fan interaction, media presence, media interaction. And it's the media that vote on this, right? And I actually spent a little bit of time yesterday speaking with a member of the media, that be our friend John Oriovitz, who he's not covering IndyCar at this day and age, but he in the past has been on the voting panel there. I just talked to him a little bit, and he told me that, he understood the Alonso one. He said he would have voted for Malukas. He said, but I mean, he said the thing that said Malukas finished 15th, right? If Malukas had finished in the top 10, like Ed Jones did, he said this would be horribly egregious.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the thing, yeah.
Back. And that's why I put that Twitter poll, which, like I mentioned off air, that normally when I do Twitter polls, I average about only 20 people. This one had over 300. And it looked like at one point it was 50-50. And then retrospectively at the end, it was advantage Johnson over Malukas. But the thing is, I felt like the thing that had me a bit reserved, I can totally understand. I don't know for a fact how the system works, which is why Alonso was able to get it over Ed Jones, because whereas Jones wasn't awfully far behind Alonso in terms of the gap between them in positions and all that. Alonso had a strong car, but this goes to attest that the Andretti cars were strong in that 16 to 17 year, where if Rossi didn't won that one, it would have been Carlos Munoz, very likely in 16 and 17. Any one of them could have been in the mix, and Alonso was just happened to be in front. And then when the engine let go, that eliminated his chance from winning it. And Jones picked up the pieces, and he had a strong month in 17 as well. It's just the fact that there's a lot of things that contribute to it, and Alonso was the more consistent. And I feel like this was similar to the same this year. Problem is, I felt like had Johnson didn't have that near scary episode in qualifying, he would have been in the Fast 9. Had he been in the Fast 9, there would have been no debate that Johnson would have locked up Rookie of the Year honors, in spite of what happened during the race where he was a complete MIA.
Well, exactly. Well, yeah. See, that's the stumbling block for me, right? Johnson did everything he needed to do as far as fan interaction, media interaction, performance through qualifying, showing respect for the speedway, bringing value to the event, right? Things that, I mean, Jimmy can bring eyes and value to the event in a way that a David Malukas cannot. Although by all accounts, Malukas busted his butt trying to be available for all the media that wanted to talk to him. It just, it's hard to compete with that name. Yeah, but so the issue I have is that, Jimmy dropped like a rock once the green flag flew. Yeah, he led a lap.
But that was during the cycle, during Marco.
During pit stop cycles. Yeah, I mean, Marco led a lap too, and he was nowhere all day. And then Jimmy wrecks on his own. But at the end of the day, Malukas ran 15th. So
he was there, but he needed to crack that top 10 like Sato was for a good bit of it.
Yeah, but it's not like, where Ed Jones finished third and they give the thing to Alonso. So it's a tough call. But I mean, there's no doubt that Jimmy brings the highest into sports, and there's no doubt that he's been a media darling. But this just didn't sit well with a lot of folks. So now, Richard,
also, real quick,
you've been quiet over there.
All right, we'll let Richard say something real quick. I was going to make real quick about. Also, it does help to have one of the top PRs in racing right now with Amy. Johnson's PR person for a number of years. She also won an award this year for something. I forget what they call it, the excellence in public relations at Indy, somewhere around those lines.
Well, there you go. All right. So, Richard, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? If you look at Rookie of the Year and pure performance, at the end of the day, he didn't win that. But if you look at the criteria that defines Rookie of the Year, there's more to it than that, isn't there? And I think, he's probably not going to be far off that in terms of the attention and the viewing figures and the attraction that he brings to the series. And it's like on the PGA Tour for golf, they now have this prize fund for fan interaction, or I can't remember the exact terminology of it now, but how the players bring people into the sport through their social media and all this sort of stuff, and their clicks and likes and all that sort of stuff. And it's massively important now to these sports to get that interaction with the fans and get people in there, so you can understand why why he won that. And he did. It's a pretty daunting track to go there, and I know he's probably in reality done probably as many laps as anybody who's in the field on that circuit in a cup car combined. So but he still has to do it, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I mean, factor in that Jimmy was on the Tonight Show and Jimmy was on Good Morning America promoting the race, right? But again, these are things that a David Malukas would not be invited to. You know what I mean?
No.
So it's
exactly.
It's a tough call, but you can't just hand off the Rookie of the Year to the highest finishing rookie. All right, because again, what if, like Alonso's case, got to let a bunch of laps, right?
Or Jackie Stewart.
Jackie Stewart's case, Teo Fabi, Jose La Garza. These are all guys that won Rookie of the Year that were not the highest finishing rookie. So
that's what they call it. Yeah. So sorry.
Very rarely they give out co-rookie years like with Jourdain and Andretti or Jourdain Pruitt.
I want to say Andretti and Guerrero were co-rookies of the year.
And I think the one that Jourdain was too.
Jourdain, and I think there are 3 cases of co-rookies of the year, and that's where the voting was tied. Actually, Rick Mears is a co-rookie of the year with somebody else. I can't remember who.
So, sorry, just to go back to the point I was making earlier. So the PGA Tour have this thing called the Players Impact Program, and to quote, which aims to reward players based on their popularity and social media impact, regardless of their results on the course. So it's a similar sort of concept here. We're starting to realize this, aren't we? We're starting to see this now. That sort of side of things is as important, if not more important, from a sponsorship standpoint, because at the end of the day, it's sponsors which pay the drivers' wages and the team's bills for the year. That excuse me, that's as important, if not more important, than raw prize money. So, it won't be long until I'm sure other sports are going to start having this, what they call it, player impact program. And it'll be interesting to see who comes up on that. Within all the motorsport series, it'd be interesting to maybe take a show one week when the racing's quiet and discuss that and see what we think of it. Yeah,
that would be a great topic for a show one time. So before we stop talking about Indy, let's talk about the second place finisher, Pato O'Ward. There were some folks who questioned the fact that he seemed to lift very while chasing Ericsson at the end. And so, Richard, what were your thoughts on that? Yep. So I'm wondering if he didn't. I think he could have. He obviously backed out of that move into turn 1 on the last lap. And I wonder if he didn't think that he was going to have another shot down into turn 3, and obviously that would be a last chance move, and Ericsson wouldn't have had an opportunity to bite back. And maybe he just lost a little bit too much momentum and got a little bit squirrely or something on the apex of turn 1 there, and just lost that momentum, which he was never able to get back. That's my thought. Well, he was
maybe
running.
just
He was running less downforce than the Ganassi cars.
yeah.
So his car would have been a little bit looser, and I wonder if he just, kind of thought to himself, if I stay right here, I'm going to put it in the wall. And I think Pato said it. Well, you figure for a guy who's also got the championship on his mind, second place on a double points day is better than a trip to the infield care center. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also they would have taken out others too.
Yeah,
another one of my pet hates and rants about the Indy 500 is the double points issue, but we've talked about that pretty much every year. We have this race. But I think my personal thought is that he, as I say, he backed out. I was going to have a second bite at it going into turn 3. But it just lost too much momentum, and Ericsson was just too fast and didn't make a mistake. I genuinely think that, because maybe if he'd got into it turn 1 and made the move, then Ericsson could have got him back going into turn 3, because you obviously lose that momentum, and you do often see it, especially on the last lap. That turn 3, you do have an opportunity for passing back there.
Yes.
Yeah.
As to Kumasato.
Yeah,
another shot at turn 3 till Dario squeezed him.
Yeah, and the thing about I think Pato made note of it when I was looking back at the presser. He mentioned that momentum is key. Like, yeah, it's going to sting a lot, but there's some upbringings at the end of the day. He's still in the championship mix. He has completed all 500 miles in each of his 500s that he has qualified. Not many has done that yet. We talk about Santino with his top 10. Let's talk about Pato as well. Being in the top 6 or so in each 500 he's made the field for. That comes a long way over time to where eventually, maybe when his time comes along, we might be talking about him as probably one of the few guys of the future that's going to be a contender in every 500, no matter the year.
Yeah, but racing drivers are very, very. They don't think like that in the heat of the moment like that. They don't go.
This was more
retrospectively. Shot at it next year. He's like, I know what you're saying totally, but I think when you put yourself in that position, you make that move and you go for it. And
I'd probably be in that same spot.
Unless you're Alain Prost or something, or somebody like that, you make that move all day, every day.
No, for sure. That's why they call him the ninja. Look, I mean, speaking of Detroit, that's how he's able to fend off Newgarden, even if they touch or come close to touching, like they did in the second race. He was still going to go for it, and lo and behold, he got it done in Belle Isle.
Yeah.
So he's not afraid to use it. It's just, and there's so much at stake that when it comes to the 500, sometimes I'd imagine I'm no driver myself. You just got to go by instinct and what works for the moment, and vice versa. You can look back at it and say, "Oh, we could have done something different," but there's not much you can do. It's whatever happened happens. All you can do is retro.
Yeah, and we also don't know what coaching he was get from his strategist over the radio either. They might have informed him that would be very ill advised to kind of stay in it right there. But hey,
Pato, here's Zach Brown on the radio. Do you want to?
Zach says you break that car, you bought it. So, but I mean, just looking at it, I don't think he could have pulled it off. I think he would have ended up in the wall. Might even took Marcus with him. So, which would have been pretty popular because Kanaan would have won, and people in Indianapolis love Tony Kanaan.
Yeah. The question, he probably, or the question is how the laws of physics were to end up with Kanaan. I don't think he would have lifted. He would have gone for it, come hell or high water.
Yeah, well, Kanaan had nothing to lose.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He's not in it for the championship. He's a one-off. It's
go for a second Indy 500, and also
great
could have ended the drought for Ganassi because with Ericsson winning, it's been a decade since they won it.
Been a decade. Yep, it's been a decade. And Chip, I was talking to who was I? No, I was reading some comments from Marshall Pruitt. He said when he talked to Chip after the race, he looked like 10 years of anguish had been lifted, as he'd been watching, Michael and Roger win the 500s after he had quite a good stretch there. But great job to the whole Ganassi team. Even with the miscues in pit lane, with Pato and Scott.
No, not Pato.
Not Pato.
Wrong
No. Alex
Palou.
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 Oh, was it a miscue with Palou? Was it really? I mean, it was just
No. It was
ill-timed.
just unfortunate. Yeah, he just.
I mean, you wonder if there isn't some rule or regulation that can avoid that, because he didn't. It was not like the Dixon one. Fair enough, he made a mistake, but Palou didn't. It wasn't like he tried to come into the pit lane when he knew it was closed and had brain fade. He was. You almost wonder if, like, when the yellow comes out, they don't freeze the field until everybody can do a lap, and something like, I don't know. I mean, because I think that was really unfair on him. And yeah,
I thought so too. Yeah, I would if I had my druthers, I would say if a guy's already there in the entrance and committed, just let him get his service. Because when you force the guy to go, he's got to go through 60 miles an hour anyway, right?
Yeah.
So he's already losing that time. Just go ahead and let him get his service. But I understand the reasoning for closing the pits, and we started doing that in 92.
But do they have in IndyCar, do they have like a commitment cone or whatever? Not a cone, obviously, but a line like they do in Formula One and NASCAR, where if they're past that point, they can't enter the pits after that line, but they can leave after that line. So you know what I'm saying? So if they've committed to it and it's a yellow, they can back out. Or, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I mean, when it's hard to turn that quick.
So you could say that, if a yellow comes out between these two lines, you weren't trying to gain an advantage. It was an honest mistake. Whereas if the yellow flag comes out before you commit, then you go past the commit, then you can exit safely, obviously.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly.
Like Hamilton did at Hockenheim in 19, was it? Like,
yes,
yeah. It had to be Hockenheim 19 when Hamilton had that debacle. Well, the crew gave Hamilton a debacle.
Yeah, stay in, stay out, do whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That was a prime example of it. If there was something like that where he said, okay, the yellows come out, you committed to the pit lane because you passed the commitment line. Okay, you can do you stop. Or there's another guy, yellows come out, he's past the commitment line. The team tell him to go back to the track. He's obviously lost a bit of time because he's obviously probably given up some spots, slowing down to get into the pit lane. But not as many as it ruined the guy's race, and the guy was arguably one of the fastest cars out there.
Yeah, if it was not Dixon, Palou was in the mix, I would be curious how those two were to play cat and mouse, because you're talking about legend, quote unquote, on the rise. That would be a neat story. Speaking of that, that's something that one Ferrari driver was very irate about. Speaking of pit stops and commitment lines.
Okay, are you trying to segue to Monaco?
Like you know my shift. You know how I transition things if it makes sense.
Yeah, so we probably should get talking about Monaco because we've been talking about Indy for over 40 minutes here. So, but before we leave the IndyCar series, let's go ahead. We got Detroit Grand Prix coming up. Got a little bit of IndyCar news. Kyle Kirkwood has been signed by Andretti Autosport to take over the 27 ride. Which is currently, held by Alexander Rossi. And of course, the worst kept secret in the world is that Rossi going to be driving the third McLaren car, although that's not announced yet. But, seems to me like Andretti went ahead and got their announcement out in order to one-up Rossi. I don't know if that's true or not. But, Kirkwood, he's doing his time here with Foyt. He's making the Foyt team look better than it has in the last couple of years. So, good on Kyle Kirkwood. I like the kid. He's got a lot of talent. Hopefully
it was imminent as well because
the
Sauber deal worked out. The Alfa Romeo deal worked out. He would have been Andretti right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He was. And Andretti's kept him under contract or has an option on his contract. They're merely loaning him to Foyt. Although under the guise of Honda's loaning him, but really, he's been an Andretti guy all through the. They just didn't have a spot for him in 22, but they've got a spot for him in 23. So,
Yeah, and they let him venture off, so he's assured he's going to have an IndyCar ride because he was the reigning Indy Lights champion. And when they had that DeFrancesco deal sorted out, it kind of left him hung out to dry. He just wanted to let him to look at it somewhere in case the Alfa Romeo deal falls through, and ultimately it did. And he's with Ford, which he has done quite well. And he had a pretty so-so month of May. He was in the mix of battling with his Indy Lights championship rival Malukas at the very end. That they both kind of knew what was at stake.
Yeah, he finished one spot behind Malukas. He finished in 16th. So I mean, not a horrible day for your first 500. You know. So
no, he held it. He stayed out of trouble for the most part. I think he's probably one of the only rookies that kind of didn't have like an incident of any kind, whereas others had one or more.
Yeah. Like we already talked about Callum Island. So, but let's go ahead and make a pick for Detroit, so we can go ahead and talk about the wet and rainy Monaco Grand Prix. So, Louise, who do you like for Detroit?
I still feel like Joseph Newgarden is going to get it done. I know we talked about the 500 when I mentioned Penske. Again, they're going to have to move on from another abysmal 500 and bounce back in Belle Isle and their other backyard, which is, of course, Chevy's backyard, but you get my drift.
Absolutely. Yep. So, all right. So, and, you know, Penske guys have been good on these type of courses. They faltered at Indy, you know. They didn't look to be the typical Penske you expected Indy, but they've been, you know, up until this point of the season, they've all been pretty solid. So that's a good pick. Richard, who do you like for Detroit?
I'm going to think Ganassi are going to go back to back, but I think it's either going to be Dixon or Palou bouncing back from that very, very disappointing week in Indianapolis.
All right. And you know who won Detroit last year, right? Marcus Ericsson.
Yep.
So wouldn't it be neat to see him go back to back there? So, you know, he's got that points lead right now.
Back to back.
Yeah, he's got the points lead there.
It's just one Belle Isle race. So that's
they're just one race this year.
The last one too in Belle Isle.
Yep. Yeah, we moved downtown next year. So I'm going to go with Ericsson just because I think it'll be neat to see you know, somebody win the next race right after Indy. We've seen it a number of times in the past when they used to go right to Milwaukee, but now we go right to Detroit. And it's been a while since we see anybody go back to back, you know, Indy and Detroit. So, but Ericsson won there last year. Ericsson's riding a high. Ericsson's leading the points. I like Marcus. I sure do. All right. So, Grand Prix of Monaco. A little bit of a late start due to the weather. So, Richard, take us through it a little bit.
You know, Monaco, this tight, twisty street circuit. And to get on my bandwagon on this again, this is a street circuit, a proper street circuit. Not like Saudi Arabia or Miami. They're not street circuits. This is a street circuit. You know, it was, you know, good, interesting practice. Qualifying for me is the highlight of Monaco weekend. To see those guys on the edge of their, you know, the mechanical and physical capabilities of those cars is phenomenal. And again, we saw, you know, that slip up at the end there with Sergio Perez spinning out, coming onto the start. I think it's Portier, isn't it, before they enter the tunnel? He spun off and then Sainz collected him, and that held up Verstappen. Despite all of that, I still think Leclerc would have had pole because he was on a seriously fast lap when that red flag came out, and I don't think anybody would have caught that. But, you know, for a couple of days before the race, there was the promise of light showers on Sunday afternoon. And he said, ooh, that could be interesting. And then you wake up early Sunday morning and, oh, no, it's going to be dry and clear. And then as it gets towards the race, there could be a little shower here or there. And then, goodness me, it's like biblical rain comes down about 20 minutes after the proposed start of the race. And, yeah, they end up, you know, they delay the start. They then go into a safety car procedure. And then, oh, goodness me, it's like monsoon weather. And they end up red flagging the race, stopping the race for a while. And then when they eventually do get it up and running, they start behind the safety car. And it was all that whole process and sequence was a
Now-
little bit.
Now, Richard,
clunky.
were there not like issues with the starting lights? I'd heard that.
Yeah.
So
they couldn't.
that's why
they
we
did
didn't have the proper Formula One standing start.
supposedly, yeah. Now, again, there's a communication standpoint there to the fans and to the spectators and something. I think maybe that should have been, they could look at that and say, well, we could have improved that sort of communication level there, because it certainly wasn't, good enough. Really, people should have been given an opportunity to understand what was happening there. But the race got started, and as Monaco, it was reasonably processional. But to see these guys drive in the conditions that they were driving in, it's fantastic. It's a real, and I think it's an sort of a misused word. So it's a privilege to watch those guys drive under those conditions on a circuit like Monaco. It's phenomenally difficult. And then as obviously the track started to dry, everybody, because it was a safety car start, everybody had to start on the extreme wets, and it started to dry. And then there was this sort of like period where they went from intermediates to the dry tire, and it was just, some teams got it right and some didn't. And Ferrari unfortunately got it wrong for both. I think Carlos Sainz went straight onto the dry tire. He did a longer run on the wets than Leclerc did. Leclerc changed to intermediates quite early and then went onto the dry tire, whereas Sainz went onto the dry tire straight from the extreme wet on the same lap as Leclerc, which caused Leclerc to be backed up and was never going to pass Sainz under those conditions. Then as the track was drying, we saw Mick Schumacher unfortunately have another big accident in the Haas, which probably did another $1 million worth of damage to his car. So he's unfortunately racking up those repair bills and eating into Haas's budget. We've got to look at this now. We have this budget cap for the year, and I'm sure teams do take spare parts and accidents and the like into consideration when they budget. But you look at Mick now with two massive accidents that have basically written off cars, probably the good of $2 million out of their budget.
Not to mention the fact that we do remember that Haas lost their primary sponsor, so a lot of this money is kind of coming out of Gene's pocket to a certain extent.
So, or his company's pocket.
Yeah. So if I ever Pierre Truffet Apollo, you got to get ready just in case.
Well, it was, it was bad. Goodness me, around Monaco is so unforgiving.
Yeah.
That you can be, you can misjudge the line by an inch, half an inch, and you have an accident like Mick did. And there's a lot of pressure on the guy, naturally. And, hopefully he can have a quiet few weeks where he really steps up and starts to improve. But saying that, we're off to Baku in a couple of weeks and another genuine street circuit. So, he's got it. You'd really love to see him have a good, good clean weekend there. But on top of that, Red Bull got, I don't want to say played the strategy card right, because I don't think they did. I don't think anybody. I think when the teams look back on this weekend at their strategy decisions and their strategy calls, it was pretty, toss of a coin sort of thing. Which lap do you come into? Which lap do you change the tires on? I just see where it all falls out. And I think Red Bull will probably look back on this weekend and go, we weren't the fastest car, but we looked into the result. But there was still yet another little sliver of controversy which crept up at the end of the race. During the race itself, both Red Bull cars, when exiting pit lane, got extremely close to the yellow line on the pit lane exit. And the rules state that a driver is not allowed to cross the pit lane exit. Now, where this has become very muddied is that over the winter, the FIA issued a new set of guidelines which determined that crossing the pit lane exit means touching the pit lane exit line. And I think it was Sonoda got caught out by this in Melbourne, in Australia. Just, ran his front left tyre out. His tyre didn't cross the line. His left tyre just touched the line, and he got a penalty for it. Now, at Monaco, Perez was very close from the images. And there's, in fact, a fan's video from one of the balconies at the exit of Sandoval there. And he probably didn't touch the line. He got very close to it. But I think from Verstappen's onboard camera, I would be amazed if he didn't touch that yellow line with his tyre. But this is where the problem came in. The FIA have their rules and regulations, but the stewards have to enact. The stewards don't enact those rules. The stewards enact the rules that have been created by the race director for that particular weekend. And they just copied and pasted last year's regulations for the Monaco Grand Prix and didn't implement the new regulation, which states about pit lane exit violations. So that gave the stewards the opportunity to dismiss the case, and probably highlighted another big issue there that we saw with these issues there in terms of how the regulations are managed. But you look at, if that hadn't been the case, would Verstappen have got a penalty? And without having seen really clear, conclusive evidence, I think he'd have got very close to it. But unfortunately, that was a big mess, and not a great, and not a great sort of way of stacking up the race there. I don't think, with some of those. Again, the FIA looking at how these regulations are written and the like, it was all a little bit, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to let the marshals know what rules to enforce. So,
yeah,
I tell
and that's
you,
my understanding of it. It was incredibly complicated, and I may not have that 100% right, but I think I'm pretty close with it. The rules do contradict each other, and the stewards don't implement the sporting regulations. They implement the regulations that have been released by the race director for that particular race, I think is how it works.
All right.
Unnecessarily complicated.
But all in all, to chime in, as I mentioned, the red flags, there were technically two. It's a very like Spa all over again, where they red flagged it before they were going to go lights out and go. So in technical rule books, Formula One don't classify it as an official red flag. But ultimately there was one officially because of mixed wreck from mid-race.
But there was a red flag under the safety car, wasn't there? You had the delayed start, which wasn't a red flag, but then
they don't count it as an official red flag. It's very similar with Spa, because it's exactly like it was with Spa in 2021, where they red flagged it before they were going to go lights out and all of that. But the red was to repair the barriers of Mick.
Oh, now, because for the first, when they stopped the race the first time after being behind the safety car, the race hadn't officially started, had it?
Yeah.
And it only started, the race actually started at the 2-hour limit, which confused everybody because the race is 2 hours long, but it has to be running in a 3-hour window. So the race actually officially started an hour after it was meant to start to get it in the 2-hour window, or the 3-hour window with the 2-hour race time. So even though the cars were sat in the pit lane under a red flag condition, the race actually started at whatever time it was, 3:00 in the afternoon there, just to confuse everybody again. And even the commentators didn't quite catch that one. Yeah,
it was just hell in a handbasket. The whole entire
race. What's Michael Massey
race
doing these days?
Oh no,
experienced race director.
I don't know. We need to go find Charlie Whiting's secret formula to see how the system.
Shout at people and don't give people like Toto and Christian Horner the opportunity to put you under pressure.
Exactly. Yeah. So one other bit of Formula One news. Perez signed to a through 2024, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, 2 years.
Which pretty much shut Gasly out of the running for Red Bull.
Gasly, who has done nothing but put on a great performance in the AlphaTauri. And
Makes
again,
you wonder,
even in Monaco, Gasly was the first guy to go to the dry tires, and yep. So
Yeah, it makes you wonder, is Gasly now a front runner for McLaren, or you think he'll stick it to the long haul to make Toro Rosso more than just a junior team of Red Bull, which is pretty much at this point they've kind of become their own identity.
Yeah, I mean, Gasly's got some decisions to make. I mean, whether or not that McLaren seat becomes available is up in the air. We know that, Zach says he would like to retain Ricciardo, but at the same time, something's got to change performance-wise. And he's also testing Colton Herta. He's got a relationship with Pato O'Ward, so
Pato also extended with McLaren too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't think those. But yeah, I think if Gasly's available, again, McLaren is supposed to be a team that want to get back to winning championships. I think in Norris they have a fantastic driver. If you want to be a serious title contender, and no disrespect to them, you don't put Herder or Award in that car. You put Gasly. If those three are all available, it's a no-brainer for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Gasly, he knows the drill. He knows F1. Bringing the IndyCar guy over. No disrespect to IndyCar guys though, but it's much less.
Got a proven race winner. How many race winners are on the grid that are in their early 20s?
Not many. All right, so we've only got about 6 minutes left to talk about the Coca-Cola 600, which means we need to talk about 100 miles a minute.
Yeah.
Well, it actually was
NASCAR history.
What did we decide? It was 619 and a half miles?
Yep, 413.
Yeah. So, Louise, quick recap. We saw Denny Hamlin take the win, but we saw a lot of
there was way more than that.
Yeah, a lot of guys take a turn at the front there. Yeah, it was a long race, a lot of different leaders, a lot of ugly looking accidents.
Well, it was the lowest number of cars running in a non-super speedway race since Dover 20 years ago or something, wasn't it?
I think it was either 04 or 95, because I know they had like a big wreck that collected like 20 cars at the start in 95. That one that Kyle Petty won.
But yeah, it was a pretty a race of attrition, wasn't it? For the fans and the drivers.
It was a trip because everybody was thinking how long this race is going to take. It's probably going to take 5 hours. But the way stage one went, it felt like it's going to be 6 hours of the Coke, which is a pun of playing with the 6 hours of the Glen. It's off the Glen, not at the Glen. That I learned the hard way on Sunday.
Mm.
That's what they call it, the 6 hours of the Glen. But I digress. It was looking like Trackhouse's night. There was a good chance that it looked like Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez were going to bring home a 1-2 run because Suarez, although he didn't let a whole lot of laps compared to Chastain, seems like Suarez was the one that can able to work his way through the front much easier than others. But then he got collected in that big wreck that brought out one of 2 red flags of the 600, and the other being the halfway point, which by the official radio, when they say withdraw the yellow, display the red, that equates and that validates to me is an official red flag in my eye. But that's a whole nother topic. Then when Suarez got collected, Todd Gilliland just pretty much obliterated him, and then Harrison Burton turned to Chris Buescher. Busch at the same time, Buescher and Suarez tangled. That broke the suspension of the car, and because of the damaged suspension, it dug into the artificial grass, resulting in the tumble, which Buescher said was much more painful than it was at Talladega. And we're talking about full speed, much more horsepower at Talladega compared to the cars that we got right now, which is a little bit less, but it still tumbled pretty hard because you're Endo Beren, and it ended up on his roof. Fortunately, Buescher was okay. There's also Kyle Larson, who had the good, bad, and the ugly type of night, except in reverse. It was ugly, then bad, then it got good towards the end and had a fun battle with Chase Briscoe. But again, similar to the Bristol Dirt race, Briscoe coming to 2 to go in regulation, tried to chance it, lost control, almost in an eerie similar way like he did against Reddick at Bristol, and eliminated him from a race win. But he finished in the top 5 because of the overtime incidents where the guys paid it very late. Austin Dillon went for 4. Chastain and Larson went for 2. Dillon made a bold move that initially I thought he's the one who caused the wreck. Then when I looked at it, I was thinking Hamlin caused it. And then at the end, I came to the conclusion it was just a racing ordeal. You got to go for it. Dillon, Chastain, Larson, Joey Logano, among others, were involved and basically were out on the running. And that's put Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch out in front. And Hamlin went on to get his second win of the season, becoming the third driver to win multiple times this year. Oh, that was eventful.
That was fast. Yeah. The interesting thing was, when Buescher was upside down, it's just interesting to see because you're so used to that NASCAR stock car having, you see all the engine exposed and and it's now they got this totally flat bottom on there. It almost looks like a, little matchbox car you turn upside down. So, but great job for Denny Hamlin. So where are we off to next? Gateway, right? Gateway, yeah. So that's a first time for the Cup Series there. Gateway is a neat little track. It's kind of a bit of an egg-shaped oval. It looks a little like Darlington, but smaller.
I was there. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and they've got a lot of work to do to get it ready. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I tell you, yeah.
It's not the only thing they got work to do. I must say, since I went there last in 19 for IndyCar and ARCA.
Yeah, but it does show you that the sort of quality of, not disrespect, but the quality of the tracks that IndyCar go to. I mean, I was very surprised at how poor the setup was there. In terms of and I'm sure it'll be a lot better, but to know that they've been racing IndyCar there for a few years, yeah.
There's a lot of things that they could upgrade, but it kind of shows you that a sold out crowd, and it shows you what Chris Blair and those guys have done with the circuit. That is one of the best promoted events out there.
And they did a heck of a job promoting their IndyCar races out there too. They were able to fill the stands there. So, hopefully that'll bring them in enough income to do some upgrades to the track there. But the Cup guys will be there.
The trucks, whether we get an upgrade or not. So let's go ahead.
Xfinity's in Portland, isn't it? Or something?
Yep. Trip down there this weekend.
And are we heading to Xfinity race? I love Portland. It's a great, one of the classic American road courses there. So that'll be. I always love the Xfinity road course races, even more so than the Cup races. I don't know why. They just tend to produce a really great product when the Xfinity guys are on the road courses. Of course they paved the way. They were at Road America before the Cup guys were, and now they're in Portland. I don't know if we'll see the Cup guys there eventually. But they always put on a good show. But so let's pick a winner for Gateway because we need to get off the air. So new track.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I have no idea.
I'm going to go with Logano.
All right. And Richard?
I couldn't possibly pick a winner for this one.
Okay. That's I respect that. And I will go with, why not? Kyle Busch. He's a guy that can win anywhere. And now we're going anywhere that nobody's been. So why not Kyle? He was pretty strong in the 600 as well. And he's, he's strong wherever he goes. So anyway, we are out of time. So I want to thank you, Richard and Louise. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank Dan Blay Racing Art. Find them on Facebook. I want to thank Mark Dill and Legend of the First Super Speedway. Find them at online, firstsuperspeedway.com. But most of all, I want to thank you folks that listen to us. Hope you've enjoyed tonight's broadcast. But until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com. Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.